Hey guys, Wayne here from Island One Coaching. I have with me today Andrew. Andrew is here to chat to me a little bit about life coaching and what it's all about. Welcome, Andrew.
Thanks for having me, Wayne. This is exciting. I love talking to coaches. I love hearing about their coaching approach. Yeah, I just love to get into it. So I'd love to learn coaching is a very popular term these days. What is your definition of what a life coach is, and who's someone who would need one, and who do you specifically love to work with and help?
So, life coaching in general is a very broad term, especially in today's day and age. If you hunt around, you're going to find a coach for almost anything these days. And it's not a new concept, even though it might be the first time hearing about coaching for some people. In actual fact, it's been around for quite a while. We've had coaches coaching celebrities for years. If you've ever been to the gym and had a fitness coach, you've been coached. So, coaching is not like a new concept, although the categorizing of it now into certain categories in order to enhance people's lives, that is a fairly recent explosion, if I can put it that way. So when I talk about categories, I'm talking about coaches that are focused on either relationships or careers or just general life coaching, wellness coaching. There's literally thousands of them. So for me personally, I focus most of my work on life coaching, and life coaching on its own is really a sense of finding someone's pain and turning it into peace or pleasure. That's how the broadest term I can use to explain what life coaching as a sense is. So where you would have, for example, a fitness coach who would focus on getting you into better physical shape. You would have a relationship coach working on how to improve your relationships and get your relationship to a point where it is strong. You'd have a career coach pushing to drive you into a successful business or a successful career in business. And then you have life coaching where it's all about purpose and direction. So more specifically for those people stuck in ruts, stuck in a stagnant loop that keeps repeating itself over and over again, always coming back to the same place they were 5 years or 2 years ago, whether that's emotionally or in any sphere of their life, actually. Getting them from A to B, from pain to peace, and that's basically it in a nutshell. Yeah.
Thank you for your answer on what life coaching is. And we weren't recording when you said this, but I mentioned how sometimes certain life coaches, they seem very salesy, and not in a bad way. They're just really able to explain and entice someone about why they would need their specific coaching and teachings. But you said, you're not really interested in the sales part of being a life coach. You're more just interested if you can help someone and someone's willing to take that next step on their own to meet you, for you to bring them to that next level, then you're willing to help them. I found that extremely admirable, and I love that, because I wish the life coaching space was more like that. It feels like it's getting very much filled with people who might not be as qualified as they claim to be, which is worrisome.
Absolutely. And exactly what you're saying about it becoming very salesy. You find when the market becomes saturated, it becomes all about who can make the most money in the shortest amount of time when it comes to coaching. But for me, that loses a bit of the essence of coaching, because essentially you're not there to milk your clients, you're there to serve them. That's always been my motto, and not just with coaching, basically with everything I've done in life. So, it's more important to me that there's a connection, that when they join me in a session or in a program, that they actually walk away with more than what they arrived, without bankrupting them.
No, of course. And being a coach, it's a mentorship. It's a long-term relationship. I know certain coaches that they'll charge for 3 months or 6 months up front, and that works for them, which is great. I imagine someone who's hiring a coach, either a high level, very expensive coach, a coach, it becomes a mentor, becomes kind of like a sage in a way. So you want to be with that coach for longer than 3 to 6 months. You want them to integrate themselves into your life potentially and keep that long-term relationship.
Absolutely. I mean, if I look at those that I've already coached, the initial program or the initial introduction to coaching with them would be a 3-month program. It's one of the programs I run, which is called the Life Compass Blueprint. And it's a 3-month program because it focuses on specific aspects of the coaching process with regards to their situation. But during the process of those 3 months, there is a list that is added to after every single session, where there are things that are not covered in what we are discussing in the program that become future coaching possibilities for my clients. And exactly as you said, if you've done what you needed to do in that 3-month period, if you've served them to the point where they want to come back and they want to see you and keep you in your life, as they said, then having those additional things that they still haven't even touched on, it's years and years and years worth of coaching work, which is just naturally flowing to the surface through the process of following the program.
I always want to learn something new. I found out about life coaching through a relative of mine. He's a life coach. It was our first conversation. He's like, I'm a psychologist and a life coach. And I said, what is a life coach? And then we went into this whole deep conversation. It was very educational. So it opened me up to this whole other market. So do you think people don't know about life coaches until they start looking for one? Kind of what would make a client realize they need or want a life coach?
Yeah, the tricky part of that question is that a lot of the time you don't realize you needed a coach until it's too late. You've already gone through you've already experienced the pain, you've already been stagnated or stuck in that rut or that loop for sometimes years. And the client I'm busy working with at the moment is a very good example. So he has been repeating cycles since he was 18 and he's close to 40 now. So that's a good 12, 13 years of repeating cycles where he keeps going back to the same mistakes that he made when he was 18 and 19. He's making them now at 34 and 35.
Wow.
So I think the important thing is that unless the client has realized that they need a coach, you're not going to just find them arriving and knocking on your door, so to speak. They need to get to a point of serious pain. That's not physical pain, that's emotional pain. That's pain of being tired of repeating the same patterns and the same cycles and always having the same results. And realizing that the only way to get out of that cycle, of that loop, is to actually have someone with a little bit more knowledge or with a little bit more guidance, a little bit more patience even, just to nudge them in the right direction so that they can move out of that. And I mean, he came to me specifically, it was more financial advice that he was looking for, where he was in debt and he wasn't getting anywhere in his career. It was standing still, and he had a relationship that wasn't moving forward because of all these financial worries. And so he came to me initially with this whole, finance mindset, like I need to sort out my finances, I need a direction to go with my career, I need to pay off my debts, can you help me with that? And I'm like, yeah, sure. So he came through and we started the program. And the beauty of the program that I do is that even though you come to me with problem A, through our analysis phase of the first 2 or 3 sessions, we really figure out what is the real problem. Is it really problem A or is it actually problem C, which you haven't even really raised at that point? So through this program, we actually picked up that, yes, he does need to sort out his finances. Yes, he does need to have a goal for the future with regards to settling his debt and getting himself financially independent. However, his plan for doing that by staying in the position that he was in, by retaining the salary that he was retaining now, was not going to get him there anytime soon. So through our investigations and discussions mostly, we discovered that the real reason that he was looking for financial independence had nothing to do with finances at all. It had to do with quality of life. So he was working 15, 16 hours a day. He was hardly at home. And when he was home, he was tired. He was miserable. The relationship wasn't going so well. There was no weekend time. There was no leisure time. So he was really just focused on work, 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 and not really getting the benefit of that as far as, I'm working my butt off, but at least I'm getting like a lot of money. That wasn't even happening. So through our discussions, we realized that his actual problem was that he needed more work-life balance. And he needed to be passionate about what he was doing instead of just floating down the river and just going with the flow, which is what he'd been doing for years and years and years. We weren't even halfway through the program, and we came to this, I would call it a breakthrough moment, where we realized this had nothing to do with financial independence. It actually had to do with him wanting a better work-life balance. And through that process, we actually then came to the conclusion that his passion and his dream has always been to become a teacher and to become a coach to young students, young teens or 9, 10, 11-year-olds. Because of his upbringing and because of his childhood, that was the point in his life where he needed someone to guide him in that way at that age. And he never had that. And now it's always been there that, he'd love to do this, he'd love to change children's lives. But because he was so focused on the rat race and so focused on that endless loop of just surviving, he never really considered that as an option until we sat and had 4 or 5 sessions through my program. And now he's actually gone and registered to get his bachelor's degree in teaching, which is so far removed from what he's currently doing, because in 4 or 5 years' time, his new goal, instead of financial independence, which he will probably get anyway through this process, his new goal now is to become a teacher and a sports coach at a intermediate school. So, and just right after that breakthrough, you just saw a different person.
Wow.
This was not the same person that sat down with me 4, 5 weeks ago. He's a different person. He's somebody that's now actually excited about life. He's looking forward to what comes next. And that's just the beauty and the power of coaching, is that unless you have that moment or the time to sit and actually let somebody ask you these very difficult questions that perhaps you've never thought of even asking yourself before, things don't change. So if you're happy to stay in that loop and in that rut, and unless you're looking to get out of that, you're not going to be seeking out a life coach otherwise. But when you get to that moment where you say, something needs to change,
right,
and you're maybe not sure exactly what it is yet, but you're uncomfortable, you're not happy, you're in a bit of pain, that's when you come across a life coach, or someone suggests a life coach to you, or you just decide that you need one. And those are the type of people that I enjoy coaching, because they come to me for a reason, because they're ready to be coached.
Right, Matt Helm, he uses the term waking up, like it's time for people to wake up, to get out of the rat race, to find what they love doing. I follow so many social media pages where, it discusses, work for 2 hours and then travel to Italy and go into these luxury hotels and live your life. So what I mean to say is, people seeing all these influencers and the viewers are trained to say, that's what I want. Yeah. Whereas what they really want is to find their own specific passion and live their own truth and find themselves. But also, I find the education system is also failing, at least in the United States, because what I'm doing today is vastly different from what I studied back in college. Yeah,
and it's so important that that you as a person realize what your passion is and what it is that makes you happy, and pursue it and fight for it. Everyone wants to put you in a box and say, you should be an accountant, or you should be a lawyer, or you should be, this, because that's like what everybody else does, or that's the way to go to have, a secure financial future. And you can do that and you can have that. But are you going to be happy? Are you going to be content with the life that you've essentially not chosen, that you've essentially been sort of pushed into or nudged into throughout your life from childhood? Is that what makes you happy? And if it's not, then what are you doing there?
It's so funny because I was just at a job where it was focused on what I thought my passion was in sound and audio. There I was working long hours every day, trying to put the time in. I knew in the long run, I said, there's no way I'm going to stay at this job longer than a specific amount of time.
Yeah.
But then, due to the industry just being so volatile, they couldn't even afford to keep me on. So now I'm, really trying to go full for it with, speaking to people like you, reaching out and helping other coaches break into the market for civilians to see that this thing exists, but it's also not just snake oil. As I learn more about life coaching, it's more interesting to me because therapy, I find, discusses the past.
That's correct.
Life coaching discusses the future and the here and now. So, I'd love to hear you elaborate on the differences of coaching and therapy and who would benefit from one or the other, or why someone would choose one over the other.
Look, we aren't here to compete with therapists or counselors at all. That's the first thing that we need to understand, is that a life coach is not here to compete or play the role of a therapist at all. In fact, we're advised not to do that because that isn't our role.
Right.
As you've said, therapists would focus on past issues. They would go really deep into your childhood trauma, the things that psychologically have impacted you from the past. And yes, life coaches use some of that to an extent, but only for the purpose of allowing the client to understand what's happening in the now, not to spend the entire time in the past, because that's not what that's all about. So it's really focused on the past. It's a very clinical process, therapy, in my view. Where you're sitting across and it's very stern and it's very formal. And generally 9 times out of 10, the therapist is going to be telling you what to do. So okay, based on your symptoms or based on, this trauma or this name I'm going to give this problem that you have, this is what you need to do. And this is how you need to live, for the rest of your life. Whereas a coach, as you said, is in the present, is in the now. So he's not as interested in the past as what a therapist would be. And he wants to be where the action is. And the action is happening right now. The problem is happening right now.
Right.
The pain resides in the right now. It's not residing in the past. It's right now that your client is unhappy. And we need to figure out how to get them out of being unhappy without analyzing or giving them a title of something that applies to them. So where a therapist is very much an advice giver, a life coach will very seldom give you advice. In fact, hardly ever will a life coach give you advice, because his intention is for you to come up with the answer. Because you already know what you want to do with your life. You already know how you want to fix your problem. You already know what goals you want to set for yourself in 5 years or 10 years. Even if you haven't voiced it or you haven't mentally thought about it, you do know the answer. So our job is really just to nudge you along so that you come up with the answer, so that you come up with the solution to your problem. And the reason why that's so effective is that once a client comes up with their own solution, they cannot fail themselves. So they've given themselves the solution. Now, if they don't follow up on that and if they don't work towards that goal or that outcome, the only person they're failing is themselves. And that's why it's so much more powerful where the client is in control and not the therapist.
Yeah.
And I've seen it over and over again where the joy on a person's face when they realize they've solved the problem almost entirely on their own, just by answering a couple of questions that maybe were a bit uncomfortable or maybe pushed them into a space where they weren't, they were like, whoa, where are you going with this? But then answering that question themselves, it's like day and night. It really is. So, yeah.
Wow. Yeah, that's what I find to be fascinating of the differences between therapy and coaching. If you tell someone you're in therapy, there's kind of this this thought that goes through someone's head. Whereas life coaching, life coaching isn't necessarily like that. That same thought does not go through someone's head, but someone might be more like, what what's life coaching?
Absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, and even just the way that you put it now, where you're saying, the first thing that goes through your head when someone tells you they're in therapy, it's a negative thought. It's negative. It's like, oh, what's wrong with you? What's your problem? What's going on in your head? Whereas if they tell you they're with a life coach, they're like, oh, okay, that's quite positive. That's quite, motivational. Because 9 times out of 10, when you hear the concept of coach or life coach or fitness coach or relationship coach, you know that it's a positive role that person's playing in someone's life versus the negative connotations of being with a therapist, for example. So, yeah. But as I said, we aren't slamming therapists. They have their role to play, absolutely. But the distinction between therapist and life coach is vitally important to understand.
I think the lines between both, they get a little crossed with the people that aren't necessarily very aware of the field of life coaching.
Correct.
They're not aware of the differences. Some people that I know, they're scared of therapy, and once you say life coaches, they're like, that's a total write-off for them, unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean, and the other thing, I mean, as I said, with therapists being like a very clinical process, you're sort of seated across from this person and they're analyzing you and they're advising you. Whereas when you're sitting with a coach, it's like you're sitting with someone that you can have a conversation with. You're connecting with that person. They are allowing you to investigate those deeper parts of yourself without any judgment or without any other intention other than so that you can have a better realization of where your issues are coming from. And then, sort of pulling you out of those rabbit holes gently instead of, sort of shoving or dragging you out of them, taking you out of those uncomfortable spaces in a gentle manner by having a friendly conversation, So connection when it comes to life coaching is so important. It's important that you connect with your client. And I think I said that right in the beginning as well, because that connection is more important than whatever you're going to charge. It's more important than the type of person you're going to be coaching or the reason you're going to be coaching, whatever category you want to coach under. Having that connection with that client is vital. I mean, it's without the connection, you aren't going to get results. And that's the bottom line. So, and it's all about walking the talk as well. So, I mean, 9 times out of 10, if you've gone to a life coach, you've gone to them because they're good at what they do, or they've already overcome the situation you're still dealing with, as an example. A fitness coach is usually already in peak form. He's already spent 20 years or 15 years getting himself into shape, getting his eating plan in place, working out 5-6 hours a day to have that physique that he has. And that's someone that you want to be your fitness coach. The same thing applies when it comes to picking and to choosing a life coach, is you want someone who's actually walked the walk as far as the path that you are on at the moment. You want them to be able to speak from a place of experience where possible. Right. And once they are able to do that, and if they are a person that is talking, walking from experience, you find that they are more inclined to serve you than someone who hasn't. Because they know the pain. Right. They've been through them all. They've gone through what you're going through, and they know how to get you out through the other side based on that. So, yeah.
I totally agree. So, I mean, based on your life experiences, I guess, did that help you kind of narrow down this specific type of client that you would prefer to work with then?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think anyone's life experiences, they sort of shape your life anyway. Sometimes positively, sometimes negatively. It all really comes down to how you're going to deal with them. And this is, again, where therapy and coaching come into play. If you really can't deal with your life experiences, perhaps they were bad or they were terrible, 9 times out of 10, you're going to end up at a therapist because you feel that's the only person that can help you. Whereas if you choose to use what has happened in your past in a positive manner in order to uplift yourself or in order to get yourself out of that mindset of that's who I am. No, that's not who you are. That's who you were. That's what happened to you. That's not who you are. What happened to you is not who you are. Right. So once you come to that realization and you start looking at life from that point of view, then you realize that your past, as whatever it might have been, is essentially the little stepping stones that get you to who you need to be one day and who you deserve to be one day. that perhaps without those things, you may not be the person you are right now. So, I mean, I've been there, poor background, broken family, divorced. I've been through all of these negative things, being destitute, being financially broken, having to hustle your way into a degree because there was no other option except if you didn't do it, it wasn't going to happen, So coming from that sort of background where it has never really been silver spoon and given to you on a plate and said, okay, now you can go here, you can do this, and everything is perfect. Nothing was perfect. And I feel like that it really is a strength when it comes to being a life coach, because whoever's coming to you, if it's anything related to struggle, it's anything related to having to fight their way through life, I'm the person you want next to you, helping you fight your way through life, because I've been there and I've fought and I'm here. So, yeah. It's
the struggle, but it's what makes you you.
Absolutely. I don't think I would have wanted life any differently to how I've had it, because I absolutely would not be the same person I am today. I wouldn't have the empathy I have today. I wouldn't have the understanding of struggle that I have today if I hadn't walked the walk that I've done. So, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm super proud of my past. I'm super proud of my struggles, because this is me, and here I am. So, yeah.
You faced the trials and the tribulations, and you came out on the other side. You came out being able to see life in a different angle, and you were able to kind of, make lemonade with the lemons that were handed to you. So I guess, Wayne, I always love to ask a question, just some advice that you would give someone who is considering a life coach, and everyone has their own story and their own experiences, but kind of what would be the first thing you would tell someone to get them on a path to future success after having some struggles and hardship in their life up until this point? What would be like one thing that you could offer them?
Okay. So I feel like, when someone is coming from a place like that, and they're ready for a coach, which is the most important thing, because if you're not ready to be coached, you're not going to be coached. And that's just the bottom line. You as a person need to be ready for change. You need to be ready for growth. You need to be excited for growth and inspired for growth. So when they come into you from that place, they've already taken the first step, in my view. So that person that joins your discovery call, so they can chat about, what you can offer them or what your program is all about, they've already taken the first step. Otherwise, they wouldn't be there. They'd be somewhere else. They'd be doing something else instead of taking out the time to sit with a stranger and discuss their future. So for me, they're already on that path to being able to be coached and being able to grow as a person. So at that point in time, it's really not even a case of asking them why they need a coach, because they already know that's why they're with you in the call in the first place. But it's more a case of why do they need you as a coach? So why are you the person that they chose to sit down with? What was it about you that inspired them to come and have this conversation with you to discuss future coaching possibilities? And generally, 9 times out of 10, that's going to be because they're related to you. They're related to your story. They're related to your energy, most importantly. And it really comes all back down to that connection again. So whatever the reason for them being there, I mean, there isn't like a one-line answer you could give to say, okay, the reason anyone should do life coaching is A, B, or C. They are there for their own reason. And their reason is unique to them. I mean, no two people will ever have the same reason for wanting to work with a life coach in even the remotest sense, even if specifically it's about career. There's 1,000 different aspects to career that could be bothering them or on their mind. The same with finances, the same with, just general life coaching. So for me, it's really like you already know why you're here. Maybe subconsciously you haven't figured out exactly what you want to do yet, but that's why I'm there. However, you know why you want to speak to a life coach, because you're ready to grow. That's the bottom line. So at that point in time,
Yeah.
If I'm connecting with you and you're feeling that energy between us, and having a conversation is pleasant, then you already know that's the person that you want to work with, and that's the person that can help you. So, yeah. So, I mean, like I said, there isn't a one-line answer
Right.
that I could give to that question. It would really just be, for me, all about the person being ready to be coached, and secondly, having that connection with the person that they are looking at to be their coach.
Right. I love that. It's the connection, and it's the client realizing that there's a way to move forward in a positive way and not keep running on the hamster wheel and hoping that something will change.
Absolutely, yeah. And I mean, and at the point where they come to a discovery call, or at the point where they approach you for coaching, that's one of the first things that we'll discuss. But I think the most important thing is that they're there in the first place, because they could have been at a movie theater watching a movie instead of sitting on a call with me. So they've already made the first step in that progress, whatever that progress might look like for them.
That's great. That's a great answer. Awesome.